10 copper coins. That's all he offered me. 10 measly coins to raise our 2 starving children alone while he lived the good life in the city. It's just a temporary divorce, he said with that lying smile. Wait for me. But I had just woken up in this body with memories of a future I refused to live. So when the desperate military widower showed up at my door saying, I have 2 children, you have 2 children, let's go to the frozen frontier together, I shocked everyone by saying yes. Big mistake. For everyone who bet against us. This is the story of how 4 broken children, 2 desperate parents, and 1 frozen wasteland became the most extraordinary family you've never heard of. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy listening. Visha opened her eyes to someone else's life, and it was falling apart. She blinked against the harsh sunlight streaming through the gaps in the thatched roof, her mind reeling from the sudden flood of memories that weren't hers, or rather weren't originally hers. She had somehow transmigrated into the body of a young woman in ancient China, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Visha, this is just a temporary divorce, a smooth voice said, dripping with false sincerity. I'll give you this 10 copper coins and you take care of the children. When I go to the city and establish myself, I'll come back to remarry you and bring you 3 to enjoy a better life. You wait for me. Visha's eyes focused on the man standing before her, Marcus, the original owner's husband. He was dressed in his best clothes, clearly ready to leave for the city, his smile as fake as the promises rolling off his tongue. In his hand, he held out a crumpled 10 copper coins note and a freshly stamped divorce letter. The original Visha would have cried, begged, believed every lying word. But the new Visha, armed with the memories of what came next, knew better. In the timeline that should have been, Marcus would go to the city, marry an official's daughter, and live well while Visha and her 2 children scraped by on scraps. Years later, when his new wife couldn't give him a son, he'd come crawling back to steal Leo and Emma, leaving Visha with nothing but regret and an early grave. Not this time. You're right, Visha said, her voice steady as she plucked the divorce letter from his hand. This divorce is temporary. Marcus's eyes lit up with relief. I knew you'd understand. Temporary in the sense that you'll spend the rest of your life regretting it. But this divorce. She waved the paper in his face. This divorce is very, very real and very, very permanent. His expression crumbled into confusion. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I don't need you. I don't want you. And I certainly won't be waiting for you. Visha snatched the 10 copper coins from his hand. This money will buy my children their first decent meal in months. As for you, get out of my house. Visha, you've gone mad. How will you survive? You're just a woman with 2 children and no. I said get out. The force in her voice startled even her. Marcus stumbled backward, his face reddening with anger and humiliation. For a moment, Visha thought he might argue further, but the cold determination in her eyes must have convinced him otherwise. Fine, he spat. Struggle on your own then. Don't come crying to me when you're starving. The door slammed behind him, and Visha released the breath she'd been holding. From the corner of the small room, 2 pairs of eyes watched her with a mixture of fear and wonder. Leo, at 7 years old, was thin as a reed, his cheeks hollow from malnutrition. Little Emma, only 5, clutched a threadbare cloth doll, her lips trembling as she tried not to cry. Visha's heart clenched. These children had been neglected, half-starved, treated as burdens by their father. But they were hers now, truly hers, and she would move heaven and earth to give them better. Come here, my darlings, she said softly, kneeling down and opening her arms. They hesitated for only a moment before rushing into her embrace. As Visha held their fragile bodies close, she made a silent vow. Marcus's abandonment would be the best thing that ever happened to them. 3 days after the divorce, opportunity came knocking in the form of a military officer's uniform and desperate eyes. Daniel stood at Visha's doorstep, his tall frame casting a shadow across the threshold. He was a striking man, perhaps in his early 30s, with strong features weathered by harsh northern winds and the burden of responsibility. His green military uniform was crisp despite his obvious travel fatigue. Forgive the intrusion, he said, his voice deep and measured. My name is Daniel. I'm a deputy battalion commander stationed at the northern frontier. I heard you recently divorced. News traveled fast in small villages. Visha wasn't surprised, though she was curious about this stranger's interest. I did, she confirmed, studying him carefully. And what brings a military officer to my door? I'm here visiting family, but I've run into a situation. Daniel's jaw tightened with emotion. My mother was caring for my 2 children while I served at the frontier. She passed away suddenly last week. I came home to find my son Nathan turned into a spoiled tyrant, and my daughter Grace. His voice cracked slightly. Grace has been mistreated and punished harshly. My mother favored boys over girls, you see. Visha's chest tightened with anger on behalf of a child she'd never met. I'm sorry for your loss, but why are you telling me this? Daniel met her eyes directly. I've been trying to find someone to marry. Someone who could be a mother to my children. But when women hear that I'm stationed in the frozen north for half the year, that there's snow and hardship, and that I come with 2 difficult children, well, the matchmakers won't even arrange meetings anymore. So you heard about the desperate divorced woman and thought you'd try your luck? Visha asked, but there was no venom in her words. She understood desperation. I heard about a woman brave enough to divorce a man who didn't deserve her, Daniel corrected gently. I heard you have 2 children of your own. I thought perhaps we might help each other. The audacity of it was almost laughable. 2 strangers for children between them, proposing to build a life in one of the harshest regions of the empire. Any sensible person would refuse. But Visha had memories of a future that taught her that sensible often meant settling for misery. I need to see your children first, she said. Daniel's temporary residence was a small house on the edge of the village. As they approached, Visha could hear shouting from inside. I don't want vegetables. I want meat. Get me meat right now. A young boy's voice, shrill with entitlement. Daniel's shoulders sagged slightly as he opened the door. Nathan was 8 years old, with a round face that might have been charming if not twisted in a petulant scowl. He stood in the middle of the room, a bowl of rice and vegetables overturned at his feet, while a small girl crouched in the corner trying to clean up the mess. Nathan! Daniel's voice cracked like a whip. What is the meaning of this? The boy's face paled when he saw his father, but defiance still glittered in his eyes. Grandmother always gave me meat. I don't want this peasant food. Your grandmother spoiled you rotten, and I've been too absent to correct it. That ends now. Daniel turned to the girl in the corner. Grace, come here. The child looked up and Visha's breath caught. Grace was perhaps 6 years old, with enormous eyes that held far too much fear for someone so young. Her thin arms told a story of neglect and harsh discipline, and she instinctively shrank back when Daniel reached toward her. It's all right, little one, Daniel said softly, his entire demeanor changing. I'm not going to hurt you. Come meet Miss Visha. Grace shuffled forward, keeping her eyes downcast. Visha's heart broke and hardened simultaneously. This child had been taught that existing was a crime worthy of punishment. Hello, Grace, Visha said gently, crouching down to the girl's level. Those are very pretty eyes you have. Like stars. Grace's gaze flickered up for just a moment, surprise evident in those star-like eyes, before dropping again. Nathan, feeling ignored, stomped his foot. Who is she? Why is she here? This is Miss Visha, Daniel said firmly. If she agrees, she will become your new mother. And you will treat her with the respect you failed to show your grandmother. I don't want a new mother, Nathan shouted. And I won't listen to her. Visha stood up, brushing off her worn dress. She walked calmly over to Nathan and bent down until they were eye to eye. Let me make something very clear to you, young Master Nathan, she said, her voice quiet but firm as iron. I don't care whether you want me or not. If I marry your father, I will feed you, clothe you, and teach you to be a decent human being. If you throw tantrums, you'll go hungry. If you demand meat, you'll eat vegetables until you appreciate them. And if you ever hurt your sister or any of my children, you'll answer to me. Do you understand? Nathan's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No one had ever spoken to him this way. I'll tell my father. I'm standing right here, Nathan, Daniel said dryly. And I approve of everything Miss Visha just said. Visha returned her attention to Grace, softening her expression. Sweet girl, I have a daughter about your age named Emma, and a son named Leo. If I become your mother, you'll be their sister. We'll look after each other. Would you like that? For the first time, Grace nodded, tiny, hesitant but real. That nod decided everything. That evening, after Visha had returned home with Leo and Emma, Daniel came to call again. This time he carried 2 rabbits he'd caught in the hills, a courting gift far more valuable than flowers. For the children, he said, handing them to Visha. They could use the nutrition. Leo's eyes went wide at the sight of fresh meat. Emma clapped her hands with delight. Thank you, Visha said, genuinely touched. Come in. We should talk properly. While the children played in the corner, Leo showing Emma how to make shadow puppets on the wall, Visha and Daniel sat at the small table, tea cooling between them. I won't lie to you about what frontier life entails, Daniel began. Winters are brutal. Snow covers the ground for 6 months of the year. Supplies are limited. The military compound is isolated. Many officers' wives can't handle it and leave. And yet you're stationed there by choice? Visha asked. Not choice, duty, but also opportunity. I was recently promoted to Deputy Battalion Commander. In a few years, if I continue to perform well, I could make Battalion Commander, then Deputy Regional Commander. That comes with better housing, better provisions, the ability to truly provide for a family. But right now it's hardship. Right now it's hardship, Daniel agreed. I can't promise you comfort. I can't promise you ease. What I can promise is honesty, loyalty, and that I'll work every day to make our life better. Visha sipped her tea, considering. She had memories from her past life of what modern comfort looked like. But she also had memories of the original Visha's timeline. Poverty, abandonment, loss. The frontier might be harsh, but it was honest hardship, not the slow poison of false promises. I have conditions, she said. Daniel leaned forward. Name them. First, all 4 children are treated equally. No favoritism, no discrimination. Boy or girl, yours or mine, they're all ours. Agreed. Second, I won't be a silent, obedient wife. If I see something that needs changing, I'll speak up. If you're making a mistake, I'll tell you. A smile tugged at Daniel's lips. I'm a military man. I value honesty over flattery. Agreed. Third, this is a practical arrangement, not a love match. We'll be partners, co-parents. We'll respect each other, but I won't pretend to have feelings I don't possess. Daniel's expression turned serious. I appreciate your honesty. I can agree to that. But I would add one condition of my own. Which is that we remain open to the possibility that partnership might grow into more. I'm not asking for love now. I'm asking that you don't close the door on it completely. It was a fair request, Visha had to admit. All right. The door stays unlocked, but no promises. No promises, Daniel echoed. They shook hands across the table, sealing a bargain that would change all their lives forever. When do we leave for the frontier? Visha asked. 2 weeks. Time enough to gather supplies and let the children adjust to the idea. Then we'd better get started. I have 2 malnourished children to fatten up before we face a northern winter. Daniel laughed, a real warm sound that softened the hard lines of his face. Something tells me, Visha, that you're going to surprise everyone who doubts you. Oh, I'm counting on it, Visha said with a smile that was all teeth and determination. The wedding was a simple affair. A brief registration before the local magistrate, witnessed and recorded without celebration or fanfare. With the formalities completed, 2 families became one. But the village noticed, and whispers spread like wildfire. Did you hear? That woman who just got divorced remarried already, to the Deputy Battalion Commander Daniel. Shameless. The ink on her divorce papers isn't even dry. And he's taking her to the frontier. With 4 children. That marriage won't last the first winter. Poor Commander Daniel. He thinks she'll be a good mother, but mark my words, stepmothers are all the same. Those children will suffer. Visha heard every whisper, saw every judging glance and dismissed them all. She had more important things to worry about, like preparing 4 children for a journey that would take them far from everything they'd known. The night before they were to leave, she gathered all 4 children around the small fire in their temporary home. Leo and Emma sat on one side, Nathan and Grace on the other, Still separate, still uncertain of each other. Tomorrow we begin a great adventure, Visha said, her voice warm and encouraging. We're going to a place where snow falls like white flowers, where the sky is so clear you can see every star, where the air is crisp and clean. Will it be scary? Emma asked, her small hand finding Leo's. Sometimes, Visha admitted honestly. New things often are. But we'll be together. And together we're strong. Nathan crossed his arms. Grandmother said the frontier is where failures go. Your grandmother was wrong about many things, Daniel said firmly, entering the room. The frontier is where the Empire's bravest soldiers protect our borders. It's a place that tests you but also teaches you. Teaches us what? Nathan asked, his defiance wavering slightly. That strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. The weak can learn to become strong. What if we're weak? Grace whispered, the first words Visha had heard her speak. Visha moved to sit beside the little girl, gently taking her bruised hand. Then I'll teach you to be strong, little star. You and your brothers and your sister. I'll teach all of you. Why? Nathan demanded, suspicion clear in his young face. Why would you care about us? We're not your real children. It was Leo surprisingly who answered. Because Mama's different now. She used to be sad all the time, but since Father left she's been fierce. Like a tiger protecting her cubs. And tigers protect all their cubs, Emma added solemnly. Not just some. Visha felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. Exactly right, my clever children. All of you are my cubs now. Nathan, Grace, I know you don't trust me yet. That's all right. Trust is earned, not demanded. But I promise you this. I will feed you, protect you, and teach you. I will never hit you. I will never favor one of you over another. And I will never, ever abandon you. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Nathan's defiant expression wavered. What do we have to do? Nathan asked, his voice smaller than before. Just try, Visha said simply. Try to be kind to your siblings. Try to listen and learn. Try to grow into people you're proud to be. That's all. That night, as the children slept in a pile like puppies, cautiously testing the waters of siblinghood, Visha stood outside, looking up at the stars. Having second thoughts? Daniel asked, joining her. Not a single one, Visha replied. This is the right choice. I know it. The villagers don't think so. The villagers thought Marcus was a good husband right up until he divorced me. Their opinions are worth less than the dirt under my fingernails. Daniel chuckled. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm practical, Visha corrected. Remarkable is what our children will be once we're done raising them. Our children, Daniel repeated softly. I like the sound of that. So did Visha, though she didn't say so aloud. The journey to the frontier took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of cramped wagon rides, cold nights camping under the stars, and 4 children learning to coexist. It wasn't smooth. Nathan complained constantly about the hard seats, the bland food, the lack of his grandmother's constant attention and pampering. Grace barely spoke, flinching at every loud noise. Leo tried his best to be helpful but was so weak from years of malnutrition that he tired easily. Emma, sweet-natured and hopeful, tried to make friends with everyone and often ended up in tears when Nathan rebuffed her. But slowly, glacially, things began to shift. It started on the 5th night, when they made camp near a river. Visha was preparing their evening meal when she heard a splash and a scream. Emma had wandered too close to the riverbank and fallen in. Visha dropped the pot and ran, but Nathan was faster. The boy dove into the frigid water without hesitation, grabbing Emma's dress and pulling her back to shore. Both children emerged soaking wet and shivering but alive. You saved me, Emma gasped, her teeth chattering. Nathan, looking surprised at his own actions, shrugged awkwardly. You're my sister now. I guess that means I have to. Visha wrapped both children in blankets and held them close to the fire, her heart pounding with residual fear and unexpected pride. That was very brave, Nathan, she said quietly. The boy's cheeks reddened. It was nothing. It was everything, Visha corrected. You put someone else before yourself. That's what real nobility looks like. Not demanding meat or throwing tantrums, but protecting those weaker than you. Something in Nathan's expression cracked open, just a little. The second turning point came a week later, when Grace finally spoke more than a whispered sentence. They were stopped for a midday rest when Leo found a bird with a broken wing. He brought it to show the others, his thin face alight with concern. "Can we help it?" he asked Visha. "We can try," she said. "But it will need care and patience." "I'll do it," Grace said suddenly, her voice soft but clear. "I'll take care of the bird." Everyone turned to stare at her. Grace blushed but didn't back down. "Grandmother used to say I was useless, but I'm not. I can be gentle and patient. I can help something broken get better." Visha's throat tightened with emotion. "Yes, you can, little star. You absolutely can." For the rest of the journey, Grace tended to that bird with a dedication that amazed everyone. She fashioned a small splint from twigs, fed it water from her own rations, protected it from the cold. And slowly the bird began to heal. "Just like you," Emma observed one evening, watching Grace check on the bird. "What do you mean?" Grace asked. "You were broken too, but now you're getting better." Grace's eyes shimmered with tears, but she smiled. A real genuine smile that transformed her entire face. By the time they finally arrived at the frontier compound, the 4 children were holding hands. The frontier compound was everything the villagers had warned about and worse. It was a collection of sturdy but stark buildings surrounded by a wooden palisade, set against a landscape of endless white. Snow covered everything, the roofs, the paths, the distant mountains. The wind was sharp enough to cut skin, and the cold seeped through layers of clothing like water through cracked pottery. The other military families watched their arrival with barely concealed pity. "Look at the new deputy commander's wife," one woman whispered loudly. "She brought 4 children. 4. And she's so young. She'll be crying to go back south within a month. If she lasts that long," another added. "The last officer's wife left after 2 weeks. Said she'd rather be a beggar in the city than a queen in this frozen hell." Visha, overhearing, simply smiled and waved cheerfully at the gossiping women. Their shocked expressions were deeply satisfying. Daniel led them to their new home. A 2-room dwelling with a large common area and a sleeping chamber. It was sparse but clean, with a massive heating stove that dominated one wall. "I know it's not much," Daniel began apologetically. "It's perfect," Visha interrupted. "It's warm, it's solid, and it's ours. We'll make it a home." The first week was brutal. The children had never experienced cold like this. Grace developed a cough that kept them all awake. Nathan's fingers turned blue from forgetting to wear his mittens. Emma cried from the pain of chilblains. Leo's weak constitution made him constantly exhausted. But Visha refused to give up. She sewed warmer clothes from the fabric Daniel provided. She learned which herbs could soothe coughs and which could prevent frostbite. She created a strict schedule of staying warm, eating well, and staying active enough to keep blood flowing. And she began to explore. The frontier, for all its harshness, was rich with opportunities for those brave enough to look. Visha had knowledge from her previous life, knowledge of nutrition, of food preservation, of foraging. She began to put it to use. When the other wives complained about the lack of fresh food, Visha ventured into the frozen forests and returned with pine nuts, wild mushrooms preserved under the snow, and herbs that could flavor the blandest military rations. "How did you find those?" one astonished wife asked. "I looked," Visha replied simply. But the real bounty came in spring, their first spring at the frontier. As the snow began to melt, Visha organized the children for their first major expedition. "We're going ginseng hunting," she announced. "Ginseng?" Leo asked, curious. "Isn't that the medicine that rich people use?" "Exactly. And it grows wild in these mountains. We're going to find it, and we're going to get rich." Daniel, overhearing this plan, looked skeptical. "Visha, ginseng is incredibly rare. People search for years and find nothing." "Then they're searching wrong," Visha said confidently. She had memories, not from the original owner's timeline, but from her past life. She knew what ginseng plants looked like, what environment they preferred, what time of year they were easiest to spot. They spent 3 days in the mountains, and the children learned patience, observation, and perseverance. On the 3rd day, Grace, with her sharp eyes and gentle nature, found the first root. "Mama, I found something." The ginseng was old, thick, and worth more than Daniel made in 6 months. They found 3 more before the week was out. We'll sell some and keep some, Visha decided. The money will buy better supplies for winter. The roots we keep will help strengthen the children. News of their discovery spread through the compound. Suddenly Visha wasn't the foolish young wife anymore. She was the woman who could find treasure in the wasteland. But she wasn't done. When summer arrived fully, she taught the children to fish in the mountain streams. When autumn came, she showed them how to trap rabbits and pheasants. She made deals with the local traders, exchanging ginseng for pork belly, chicken, and the expensive vermicelli noodles that could be stored all winter. Their first winter feast was legendary. Visha prepared a massive pot of pork stewed with vermicelli, the meat so tender it fell apart at the touch of chopsticks, the vermicelli soaking up the rich, savory broth. She made chicken stewed with hazel mushrooms, the earthy fungus perfectly complementing the bird's delicate flavor. The 4 children, now noticeably healthier, with filled-out cheeks and bright eyes, sat around the table and stared at the feast with wonder. "Is this all for us?" Nathan asked, his voice small with disbelief. "All for our family," Visha corrected. "Eat until you're full. Growing children need good food." Grace picked up her chopsticks with trembling hands. Emma bounced in her seat with excitement. Leo's eyes filled with grateful tears. Nathan took one bite of the pork and burst into tears. "What's wrong?" Daniel asked, alarmed. "It's so good," the boy sobbed. I've been so mean to you and you still. Visha stood and walked around the table, pulling the crying child into her arms. "That's what mothers do, Nathan. We feed our children, all our children, whether they've been perfect angels or little demons. You're learning and growing, and that's all I ask." That night marked a transformation. Nathan stopped testing boundaries and started helping. He carried water, chopped wood, and protected his younger siblings with fierce devotion. The other children flourished too. Grace's cough disappeared, replaced by a clear, sweet singing voice. Emma grew bold and adventurous, no longer afraid to explore. Leo, gaining strength with proper nutrition, became an avid reader and helped teach the other children their letters. The compound's residents watched in amazement. "I can't believe it," one officer's wife admitted to Visha. "We all thought you were too young, too inexperienced. We thought the children would suffer." "Children suffer when they're neglected, not when they're challenged," Visha replied. "The frontier is harsh, yes, but it's also honest. There's no room for pretense here. Only hard work and genuine care." The winter ice brought new opportunities. While other families huddled indoors, complaining about the cold and the isolation, Visha bundled up the children and led them onto the frozen lake. "Ice fishing," she announced cheerfully. "Mama, it's freezing," Emma protested, though her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Then we'll move fast and stay warm," Visha countered. "Besides, fresh fish tastes better when you catch it yourself." She taught them to drill holes in the ice, to bait hooks with scraps, to wait patiently for the telltale tug of a bite. Daniel, watching from shore, marveled at how she turned survival into adventure. They caught more fish than they could eat: pike, carp, and precious trout. Visha showed the children how to smoke some for preservation, salt others, and prepare the freshest for immediate meals. But her greatest innovation came during the harshest week of winter, when supplies ran low across the entire compound. She created a communal feast. "Everyone brings what they have," she explained to the gathered families. "We pool our resources and cook together. No one goes hungry, and we all get to enjoy more variety." The other wives were skeptical but desperate. They brought their meager supplies: a bit of grain here, some dried vegetables there, precious oil and salt. Visha organized the children to help cook. Grace, with her careful nature, measured ingredients. Nathan, strong for his age, stirred the massive pots. Emma and Leo distributed bowls and chopsticks. The result was a feast that fed 40 people: hot soup, steaming rice, fish and fragrant broth, and even a precious chicken that one family contributed. "This is incredible," the regional commander said, his stern face softening as he visited the communal gathering. "In 10 years of managing this outpost, we've never. How did you organize this?" "With respect, sir," Visha replied, "you've had soldiers here for 10 years. But you've never had a mother determined not to let anyone go hungry. Once you figure that part out, the rest is simple logistics." The officer laughed, a booming sound that echoed across the compound. Daniel, you married well. Very well indeed. That winter something shifted in the compound. The families began to work together more, share resources more freely, support each other more actively. And at the center of it all was Visha, the young wife everyone had pitied, now respected and admired. 3 years passed like pages turning in a book. Daniel was promoted to battalion commander, with increased pay and better housing. They moved into a larger home with separate rooms for the children, a proper kitchen, and even a small garden plot. But more important than the material improvements was how the children had grown. Nathan, now 11 years old, had transformed from a spoiled brat into a responsible young man. He was the first up every morning, helping with chores before studying. His martial skills, taught by his father, were impressive. But what made Visha most proud was his kindness, the way he carried Grace on his shoulders when she was tired, the way he defended Leo from teasing by other boys, the way he braided Emma's hair with surprising gentleness. Leo, at 10, had filled out from the sickly child he'd been. He was never going to be a warrior like Nathan, but his mind was sharp as any blade. He could calculate numbers faster than the compound's clerk, could read and write with beautiful precision, and had a memory that absorbed everything he learned. Emma, at 8, was sunshine personified. She made friends with everyone, from the commanding officer to the lowliest servant. Her laugh was infectious, her optimism unshakable. She had her mother's determination wrapped in sweetness. And Grace, sweet broken Grace who'd arrived with bruises and fear, had become the compound's little songbird. At 9 years old, she had a voice that could make grown soldiers cry. More than that, she'd found her purpose in healing. She helped Visha with medicine, tending to sick children and injured adults with a gentle touch and intuitive understanding. "They're thriving," Daniel said one evening, watching all 4 children play in the snow, laughing, shouting, building an elaborate fort together. "Of course they are," Visha replied. "They're loved, fed, and challenged. That's all children really need." "And what about their mother?" Daniel asked quietly. "What does she need?" Visha looked at him, really looked. Daniel had aged in 3 years, small lines appearing at the corners of his eyes, streaks of silver in his dark hair. The responsibility of command wore on him. But to Visha, he'd never been more attractive. "She needs," Visha said slowly, "to acknowledge that this arrangement has become more than practical." Daniel's breath caught. "Has it?" "You know it has." They'd been dancing around their growing feelings for months. The way Daniel's hand lingered when he helped her with her coat, the way Visha always saved the best portions of food for him, the way they found excuses to stay up late talking after the children slept. "I love you," Daniel said simply. "I've loved you for at least a year, maybe longer. I didn't say anything because of our agreement." Visha kissed him, effectively stopping his words. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "I love you too, you ridiculous man. I think I started falling for you the day you jumped into the river to help Nathan save Emma. Even though you can't swim well." "You knew I can't swim well?" "I know everything about you, Daniel. Just like you know everything about me. That's what happens when you build a life together. You learn each other's hearts." They stood together in the doorway, watching their children play, and Visha felt something she'd never experienced in either of her lives: complete contentment. For years after the divorce, an unexpected visitor arrived at the compound. Marcus. Visha was in the market when she heard the whispers. "Did you hear? A man came asking for Commander Daniel's wife. Claims to be her first husband." Her blood ran cold, then hot with fury. She'd known this might happen. The original timeline had Marcus returning to reclaim his children, but she'd hoped her different choices had prevented it. Apparently not. She found him outside their home, looking shabby and desperate. The city life he'd sought had clearly not treated him well. His clothes were worn, his face gaunt, and desperation gleamed in his eyes. "Visha!" he exclaimed when he saw her. "I finally found you. You look different." She did look different. Good food, clean air, and genuine happiness had transformed her. Her skin glowed with health, her eyes sparkled with vitality, her posture radiated confidence. At 29, she looked younger than she had at 25. "Marcus, why are you here?" "I came for you and the children, of course. I told you I'd come back for you. My wife, my second wife, she couldn't give me a son. We need Leo." And you look like you've been well fed. Commander Daniel must pay well. We could. Stop talking, Visha said coldly. Let me make this absolutely clear. You have no wife. You have no son. You have no claim to anything in my life. But Leo is my blood. You sold your blood for 10 copper coins and a divorce letter. You don't get to buy it back. Marcus's expression turned ugly. I have rights. The law says. The law recognizes that you cast her aside and relinquished all claims as a father, Daniel's voice cut in. He had appeared from the compound, his uniform impeccable, his expression deadly. And the law also forbids disturbing a military household. Would you like to test which carries heavier consequences? Marcus paled. I just want what's mine. You have nothing, Visha enunciated clearly. You threw us away. Someone else picked us up. That's how it works. Leo, Marcus called out desperately. Son, don't you remember your father? Leo had emerged from the house, along with the other children. At 11, he was already taller than Marcus, with his mother's sharp eyes and his stepfather's straight bearing. I remember a man who left me starving, Leo said coldly. I remember crying at night, wondering why my father didn't love me. I remember my mother's tears. But I don't remember a father, because I never had one until Commander Daniel. I'm your real father. No, Leo said firmly. You're the man who donated blood. My real father is the one who taught me to read, to fight, to stand up straight. My real father is the one who's been here. Emma stepped forward, now 9 and fierce like her mother. Go away. You're not welcome here. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. Whether genuine or performative, Visha couldn't tell. Please, Visha. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Your sorry means nothing, Visha said. You get one chance to leave with your dignity intact. Take it. For a moment, she thought he might argue further. But something in her eyes, a hardness that hadn't existed when he'd known her, made him think better of it. You'll regret this, he spat. The only thing I regret, Visha replied calmly, is the years I wasted believing you were worth anything. Now leave before my husband has you escorted out. Marcus left, his shoulders hunched in defeat. Daniel put his arm around Visha, pulling her close. Are you all right? I'm perfect, Visha said honestly, because I just got to tell my past to stay in the past where it belongs. Leo hugged his mother from the other side. Thank you, Mama, for choosing us over him. Oh, sweetheart, Visha said, her voice thick with emotion. That was never a choice. That was always the answer. 2 more years slipped by, bringing the children into young adulthood and Visha into what should have been her early 30s. But time, good food, clean living, and genuine happiness had a strange effect. She looked even younger than before, her skin luminous, her energy boundless. People say we look like sisters, Grace said one afternoon as she and Visha worked in the medicine garden together. At 11, Grace had blossomed from the frightened child she'd been into a gentle, confident girl with a natural talent for healing. People should mind their own business, Visha replied, but she was smiling. Do you mind? That father looks so much older than you now. Visha glanced toward the training yard where Daniel was drilling the troops. At 39, he was beginning to show silver at the temples, and the lines from years of command and harsh weather were becoming more pronounced. He looked distinguished, powerful, and yes, older. Let me tell you something, little star, Visha said, setting down her basket of herbs. When I married your father, I told him it was just a practical arrangement. I said we'd make do. Do you know what I meant by that? That you'd tolerate each other? That we'd work together to build something stable, something reliable, something adequate. Visha laughed. I was such a fool. Why? Because what we built together isn't adequate, it's extraordinary. Look around you, Grace. Look at Nathan, training to be an officer like his father. Look at Leo, already being courted by the provincial governor's office for his talent for governance. Look at Emma, learning 3 languages and charming everyone she meets. Look at yourself, healing people with medicine and kindness. You did that, Grace said softly. You made us extraordinary. Your father and I did it together. That's what makes it perfect. So no, I don't mind that he's aging. I'm honored to age alongside him, Or at least I would be if I could figure out why I keep looking younger. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the compound like music. That evening the family gathered for dinner. A regular occurrence but still precious. All 4 children, now young adults, sat around the large table with Visha and Daniel. Nathan, at 13, was already showing promise as a future officer, respected by those who trained with him. He sat straight and proud but softened when Grace passed him the rice. Leo, at 12, had caught the attention of local scholars with his quick mind and careful penmanship. He would soon begin advanced studies. Emma, at 10, was in her energetic phase, currently arguing with Daniel about whether she should be allowed to help at the trading post to practice her language skills. And Grace, at 11, had discovered her gift for healing, and was already helping Visha tend to minor injuries and illnesses in the compound. I think, Daniel said, watching his children with undisguised pride, that we did good. We did better than good, Visha corrected. We did impossible. Remember when everyone said we'd fail? Nathan asked, grinning. Remember the gossip when we first arrived? That marriage won't last the first winter, Emma quoted mockingly. Well, we've lasted 6 winters and counting. Stepmothers never truly love their stepchildren, Grace added, her eyes twinkling. But we have a mother who loves us so much she makes us exercise after meals so we won't get fat. That's not love, that's torture, Leo joked, rubbing his full belly. Making us do chores for our dinner. Making you appreciate your dinner, Visha corrected. Gratitude comes from effort. Everything you taught us came with a lesson, Nathan said, more serious now. Every hardship had a purpose. Every challenge made us stronger. I used to resent you for that. Used to? Visha asked, raising an eyebrow. Now I'm grateful. Because of you and Father, we know how to survive anything. We know how to thrive anywhere. Daniel raised his cup. To Visha, who turned for broken children and one desperate widower into a family that thrives in a frozen wasteland. To Mama, the children chorused, raising their cups. Visha felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. To all of us, she corrected. To the family we chose to become. 20 years later. Time continued its march, transforming the frontier compound from a lonely outpost to a thriving settlement, thanks in no small part to the organizational improvements Daniel implemented as Deputy Regional Commander, a position he'd earned through nearly 2 decades of distinguished service. At 45 years old, Visha sat in the garden of their comfortable home, now the largest in the compound, and marveled at how far they'd come. Nathan, at 28, was a battalion commander himself, stationed at an even more remote frontier post with his wife and 2 children. He visited twice a year, always bearing gifts and stories. Leo, at 27, had become an important advisor to the provincial governor. He'd married a scholar's daughter, and together they'd written 2 books on governance and statecraft. Emma, at 25, had shocked everyone by becoming a translator and merchant, traveling the trade routes with her merchant husband. She sent letters from exotic locations that made Visha laugh and cry in equal measure. And Grace, at 26, had become the frontier's most respected physician. She'd never married, claimed she was married to her calling, but she loved and was loved by the entire community. All 4 children visited for the New Year celebration, bringing spouses, children, and stories. You know what people say about you, Mother? Emma asked over dinner, her eyes dancing with mischief. That I'm a witch who doesn't age. Visha replied dryly. It was true, at 45 she barely looked 35, a fact that was either enviable or suspicious depending on who you asked. They say you found the secret to immortality in those mountains, Grace added, smiling. They ask me for the medicine, but I tell them it's not medicine, it's love. It's clean living, good food, and staying active, Visha corrected practically. And good genes, probably. It's magic, little Lily, Nathan's daughter, insisted. Grandmother is magic. Daniel, now 53 and fully gray but still strong, pulled Visha close. She turned disaster into a thriving lineage, he said. A lineage? Visha laughed. That's excessive. Look around you, Daniel gestured to the gathered family. 4 successful children, 5 grandchildren, and more love than any table should be able to hold. If this isn't a flourishing lineage, I don't know what is. Later, after the children had gone to bed and the adults were sharing wine by the fire, Nathan asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. Mother, do you ever regret it? Choosing the frontier over staying in the village? Raising 4 children instead of just your own 2? Making do with a practical arrangement? Visha looked at Daniel, who raised an eyebrow, a challenge and a question. I told your father once, Visha said slowly, that we could just make do, that we'd build an adequate life together. She laced her fingers through Daniel's. I was wrong. We didn't make do, we made extraordinary. We didn't just survive, we thrived. And as for regrets, she looked around the room at her 4 children, so different, so accomplished, so loved. My only regret, she said firmly, is that I didn't get to see Marcus's face when he learned that the family he abandoned became more successful, more loved, and happier than he could ever imagine. That would have been deeply satisfying. The adults burst into laughter. To making do, Daniel said, raising his cup with a smile that showed he understood the irony. To making extraordinary, Visha corrected, touching her cup to his. And in that moment, surrounded by the family she'd chosen and built, in a frontier that had become home, with a husband who'd become her heart, Visha knew that every choice, every hardship, every challenge, every moment of doubt, had been worth it. The fake divorce had freed her. The remarriage had saved her. The frontier had forged her. And love, unexpected, unplanned but undeniable, had completed her. Mama, Emma said softly, tell us again about the day you met Father. Again? You've heard it 100 times. Tell us anyway. So Visha told the story one more time, of a desperate widower and a newly divorced woman, of 4 broken children and 1 frozen frontier, of a practical arrangement that became an epic love story. And as she spoke, her children and grandchildren listened raptly, because it was their story too. The story of how a family made do. And in doing so, turned it into something extraordinary. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more powerful stories every day. Thanks for watching.